All right, everybody, we are back with another episodes with Secrets of the Fallen. Today we have an awesome series that we're going to go through of episodes going over secret societies. I know we've been hinting at it for a while now, and we're finally going to go through it. This series is really it gets really complex the higher up you go. I mean, it's
Yes.
complex down at the bottom, but we're going to go over all the major secret societies, the hierarchies of them, and we're going to go from bottom to the very top of where this all goes. Because at the very top, you have that's where you have the original 13 bloodlines and everything like that. We'll go over that later on. But today we want to mainly go over. We're going to go from bottom to top. So we're going to go over the Freemasons and the Illuminati. Um, a lot of people these two secret societies are different societies, but they're very intertwined with each other as far as um, how they operate. And at the very top of each of them, they're in both clubs, but their objective in the grand scheme of the mission is to are two completely different things. But we'll let Archie go through the Freemasons, and then I'll take over on the Illuminati's because Archie has a lot of knowledge on the Freemasons. So you can take it away.
I will. And so my experience with the Masons is that I once was a Mason. I was a I had my third degree in the Masonic Lodge. I also was a Shriner, and I come from a long line of Masons. So my grandfather was a Mason. My father was a Mason. My uncles were Masons. My grandmother was in the Eastern Star, and that's something we can get into as well with the Eastern Star, which is basically the women's side of Masonry. But the the Masons consider themselves one of the oldest fraternities in existence. Supposedly, the Masonic order goes all the way back to the Temple of Solomon, and so they kind of boast of that we're a fraternity that goes back over 2,000 years. Um, Basically, Masonry is a pagan religion. That's
Uh oh.
basically um, is what it is. It's
Sorry, guys. We got a little technical
basically.
difficulty here. We lost Archie.
Or am I back on?
Man,
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Am
do a whole new thing. All right, guys, we're back. Sorry, we had a little technical
I,
difficulty there. Seems to happen every time we try
yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Well,
It's just weird. I don't want to connect
yeah.
dots, but it's very weird. Once we start talking about things that
It truly
I
is.
guess people don't want us talking about, situations happen.
It it causes some difficulty. So let me kind of reiterate since we got that technical difficulty. So the I come from a long line of Masons. My grandfather was a Mason. My father was a Mason. My uncles were Masons. My grandmother was in the Eastern Star, which is the women's side of Masonry. And Masonry, basically, they boast of being the oldest fraternity in existence. They supposedly go all the way back to Solomon's Temple. But in reality, the Masonic order is nothing but a pagan religion. Now, guys will argue with you about that, and oh, it's just we do a few little rituals and that kind of thing. And for the most part, sure, it's just a bunch of guys getting together and they meet and they do these little ritual things. And on the surface, it seems like it's no big deal. And and for the most part, um, guys that are in the lodge, in a regular blue lodge, um, they go to church every Sunday, they have families, they go to work every day. It's to them, it's no big deal. But when you start to uncover the truth of masonry, it goes deep into a Luciferian paganist religion. It truly does. And now that doesn't mean that guys that are in it are Satanists. I'm not saying that at all. That's not what I'm saying. But when you do the research and dig into what masonry truly is, then you begin to uncover and peel back the the parts of the onion that expose what masonry is. And again, I was a master mason, so I went through all 3 degrees in the Masonic Lodge, and then I went and became a Shriner. And you can't be a Shriner without being a Mason. And so it's the way the lodge is set up is you have 3 degrees. So you have your entered apprentice degree, which is your first degree. Then you have your fellowcraft, which is your second, of course, and then you have your master mason degree. Now, after you've reached all 3 of these degrees, you're considered a master mason. You're established within the lodge, and now you can go on to go into to be a shrine, part of the be a shriner, or you can go on and go either the York Rite or the Scottish Rite. So that's 2 divisions. But you must understand that each one of these other clubs or other parts of masonry, you have to pay dues to be in the Blue Lodge. And then if you want to be a Shriner, you have to pay dues to be in the shrine. And then if you want to go York Rite or Scottish Rite, then you have to pay dues. So you're you're paying dues each place you go. And then if you want to go on even further, you can become a 33-degree Mason. And then there is what is called the hidden degrees. Now, a lot of guys do not know this, but there are other degrees other than the 33 degrees. They're called the hidden degrees. And these degrees, after you've gone as far as you can go, you're up in the upper echelon of the Masonic order, then you can be exposed to these higher degrees. And within these higher degrees, you find out the true meaning of masonry. And it gets very deep into occultism. It gets very deep into Luciferianism in these other degrees. And a lot of guys don't understand this. And it's, it doesn't mean that they're Satanist. It just means that they don't understand that there are parts of masonry out there that there are things I should say things of masonry that deal with paganism and occultism and this Luciferian religion. Now, when you go into your inner apprentice, you have to go through this ceremony where you're blindfolded, you're hoodwinked, which they put a cable tie around your foot, and it's just some weird stuff that you have to do as part of the ceremony. Then the next ceremony, there's something weird in the next ceremony. And then the third ceremony, which is your Master Mason, it gets even weirder because you do a reenactment of a murder. And it gets so bizarre. And then when you do your different rituals for your different meetings, you have to open and close your meetings a certain way, and certain what they call stations have to be turned a certain way to face a certain direction, north, south, east, and west. And so it gets really weird. It really truly is. And not to make fun of anything, because I know a lot of guys really are into the lodge and take it really seriously, but it's just weird. Some of the things are very awkward, very weird, and um, so most lodges that you go into, the lodge room, what they call the lodge room, is black and white tile, which is considered the duality, which means there's a good and there's an evil. There's a duality within um, the universe.
Hmm.
Now, when you talk about masonry, a lot of times you'll see the G with the square and compass. Well, that square and compass is referencing to the builders of Solomon's temple. So they use a square and they use the compass to build the temple. And then the G is supposed to represent, a lot of people think it represents God, but it does not. It represents the universe of geometry,
Hmm.
which is knowledge. Well, who is knowledge? Who brings us knowledge? Satan says that he brings us knowledge. He was the light bearer. Satan was the light bearer, and they talk a lot about bringing the light in masonry. You must go to the light. That's part of the things that you recite in masonry is you want to find the light, the
Right.
knowledge. Well, part of that is who's bringing you the light and knowledge. Well, a lot of guys think it's God, but in reality, it's not. It's Satan who's bringing that, and so a lot of guys get confused, and because it's it's a reverse of what you think it should be. Because when you go in and you are initiated, they ask you the question, "Who brings you the light?" Well, when I was initiated, I said God because I thought God was bringing me light. But in reality, the light bearer is Satan. And people, these guys just don't understand that.
And that's the bait and switch on a lot of these things is
Absolutely.
who who's your God? Because God is a term,
Mhm.
but Yahweh is the one true God.
Yes.
And when they say God, they want you to believe Yahweh. However, when what they
Yeah.
truly mean is Satan, and because
Yes.
that is their God.
And a lot and I mean every guy in the lodge, like from the leaders in the lodge and when I say lodge, your basic blue lodge, from the leaders to the entered apprentices, they don't understand this because they've been taught to believe that who you're referencing is God. I mean, there's Masonic Bibles. There's Bibles that have the Masonic symbol on it. And really and truly that's blasphemy in my opinion. Because masonry has no bearing on biblical aspect at all. Because it's a pagan religion. That's basically what it is. Even my father, who was a pastor, I mean, he was a Southern Baptist minister. He was a Mason, but he joined the Mason Lodge when he was young, and I guess in his late 30s, he kind of stepped out of the lodge, um, and he didn't go back. Um, he wasn't necessarily against the lodge, but because I don't think my father truly did the research and understood what the Masonic order was, but he just took a step out of the lodge because it took too much of his time and he wanted to focus in on church and winning people to Jesus, which I'm so glad that he did. But he when I was interested in joining the lodge, he never persuaded me against it, but he never persuaded me to it. But he admitted to me, he said, really, truly, it's a pagan religion. You
Yeah.
know, it's truly pagan. And so when you go through the different degrees, you have to learn an oath. So you have 3 oaths that you have to learn and recite, and you can't write it down. So when I went to go learn my oaths, I went with a fellow, and he taught it to me verbally. and I would learn it, and I learned to recite it, and then you go before the worshipful master during a ceremony, and you recite the pledge or the oath, and then if it's deemed accessible because you 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 were able to retain and recite the information, then you are considered, and you move on to your next degree. And then you learn that oath, and you learn it the same way. You learn it by somebody teaching it to you orally, because you can't write it down because it's considered a secret
Mhm.
society. And here's another thing that's a dead giveaway. The Bible says what is done in the dark will be brought into the light. Jesus never did anything in secret. Now, people, they met in the upper room, and had the Last Supper. Um, but Jesus, when he was speaking to people, he spoke to the 5,000 out in the vast crowd. It was not in
Mhm.
secret, you see. So that's a good dead giveaway that when something's in secret, it's probably not of God. Doesn't mean it's necessarily against God, but it's probably not of God,
Right.
because God doesn't hide anything. God, it's all out in the open. God wants to expose the gospel, Jesus' gospel to people. So that was a kind of a dead giveaway to me. Once I got into the Masonic order, I never I never did feel comfortable. There was something that always lingered in my spirit that told me this is not what you think it is. It's not what has been portrayed to you. And so it wasn't till after I got my worshipful master's degree, then I went on into the Shriners, that I really started doing the research and understanding. Whoa, this goes against the Bible. A lot of the stuff is going against the Bible, because you take an oath, and these oaths, basically, you admit that if you divulge any of the secrets of Freemasonry, then you can be killed in some very heinous ways because you've divulged these secrets. Now, that doesn't sound very Christian to me.
No. And the
You
secrets
see,
that you're referring to, I'm not going to ask you because obviously, but from what I've read and understood, these secrets are secret as far as knowledge goes. The Masons are their secrets are very much built in just universal knowledge. Is that correct? Is that right? Or
to a certain degree, I mean, truly, the regular farmer that goes to church every Sunday, that goes to the Blue Lodge just to have fellowship, they're not interested in the different
yeah,
sciences. They're just going there to meet up with a bunch of their buddies and do these weird rituals. And they're not Satanists. They're really good guys. They're family guys. They're not out to hurt anybody, but they just don't understand what they're
yeah.
involved in. They truly don't
And
understand.
so Shriners, what's a Shriner? Is that just a title, or is that are you given per, like certain
But
responsibilities, or like let's say you're a Shriner, what are you given like certain responsibilities within the lodge as far as just like how operations go, or are you given like a task um, to do outside the lodge, or what exactly is that?
so your different levels. We'll start with the regular Blue Lodge, which is your regular Masonic lodge. So you have each of these degrees. Then you have different. What would it be classified as? A different. I guess, different classes of, or different managers of different stations within the lodge. So you have what they call the worshipful master, which your third degree is worshipful master, but then you have a worshipful master over the lodge. And so this worshipful master opens and closes meetings and conducts business within the lodge. Then you have other guys that are assigned that are beneath him that do other activities within the lodge. So that's kind of the hierarchy within the Blue Lodge. Then, if you want to get into Shrine, then you go and oh, by the way, you have so you have to ask to be a Mason. So if you're interested, then you may go to somebody that's a Mason and say, "Hey, how do I join the Masonic Lodge?" And they kind of talk to you, and they get a bunch of information, and they say, "This guy's interested in being in the lodge." Then they'll set up a meeting with one of the worshipful masters. You sit down, you kind of have a talk and discussions about, what your religious views, might be even what your political views are. What's your, do you love America? You know, do you have any ill will against certain parts of our government and all this kind of stuff? They ask you a bunch of different questions. If they deem you to be a candidate, then they'll set up in a meeting for you to come in and let the candidate, let the other members kind of talk to you. So then you'll go in, you kind of talk to the other members, they get a feeling for you. Then they will do in what they call cast a vote. Now, you've heard of the old saying, "You've been blackballed."
Yeah.
Okay, that's the Masonic Lodge is where they get that, because what they do is each member gets a
Hmm.
marble. They'll either get a white marble or a black marble, and they'll put it in to this like bowl, and then they'll count the white marbles to the black marbles. And usually it takes just one. If one person puts in a black marble, you're out. So it has to be a unanimous vote. You 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 can't just, it can't be more white marbles than black marbles, or more black marbles than
So it's
white
just got to be
marbles.
all
If you get one
marbles.
black marble, it's got to be all white marbles. So if you get one black marble, you're out there, because they want unity, and they feel that if there's one person that does not like you, then it's going to cause an issue. And so they'll vote on you, and you have to have a unanimous vote. Then once they feel that they've had that vote and you're accepted in, then they set a time up to do your entered apprentice ceremony, and you'll go through the entered apprentice ceremony, and you start your journey on into masonry. Now, the shrine is a little bit different. You kind of the shrine, you kind of have to be nominated, and because you're already a Mason, basically guarantees that you're going to be nominated and get into the shrine, because the shrine is like the social gathering of the Masonic order. So women cannot be in the Masonic lodge, as far as the Grand Lodge room. Women cannot go in.
Okay.
In the shrine, women can go in. Women can join their men in certain activities and events inside the Shrine Lodge.
So they're two different.
So
So
because
like you have your lodge, and then you have a Shriner lodge, which is just Shriners from the different blue lodges.
exactly, yes, they're Masons, but they're all Shriners. Because you can't go into a you cannot go into a Shrine Lodge unless you are a
You're
Shriner.
you're you're a Shriner
In
of
other
of
words,
your of your local lodge or whatever.
Yes. Now, once I am a Mason, I can go into any Mason lodge in 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 the United States and America. I can go into any lodge. Once I become a Shriner, I can go into any shrine lodge. I just have to fill out a card and let them know what shrine lodge I'm in or what Masonic lodge I come from, that type of thing. And you know, to let them know that I am in this group or whatever. So, man, the like I say, the shrine, the initiation into um, the Masonic order was kind of weird and occultic, but the initiation into the shrine was almost like your typical frat boy initiation. Like there's a lot of hazing involved getting into the shrine. You have to do something what they call walk across hot sands, which was horrible. It's a ritual that's very painful, and they just do a lot of hazing, and it's very demeaning. But then once you become part of the shrine, there's different clubs within the shrine. So there's different clubs that they do events. So you know how you've seen Shriner clowns that are in parades, and you've seen where there's the Shrine motorcycle that they're in parades, or Shriners that have little little go karts and they do parades. Well, that's those different clubs that are in the shrine, and you get to choose what club you want to be in. And again, then if you join a club, well, that's more money that you've got to pay. And but you you get into the shrine, and the big thing with the shrine is they do the paper drives. You know how the guys sit out front of the grocery stores with the fez on collecting money, and they usually give you a little newspaper, and it talks about the Shriner Hospital, because the shrine is has really built up these shrine hospitals, and the way they get money is doing the paper drives, the Shriner Circus. Because if a child goes to a Shriner hospital, it's usually all paid for, or
So
mostly
it's
paid
like their
for.
philanthropy.
Um, exactly, that's exactly what it is. And don't get me wrong, the Shriner Hospital has done a lot of good.
Yeah.
Okay, they've done a lot of good with crippled and burned children. I have a friend of mine. His father was severely burned as a kid, and he was in a Shriner hospital. So, the Shriners have done a lot of good in that area. But um, the shrine is based on Islamic, um, basically Islamic religion. That's what the shrine is based off of. When you hear the story of the shrine, and they talk about walking across hot sands, they tell you this story of how these Islamic people. It's a whole big story of how they went out and overtook this other place. But now, when you look at the history, so you have the Fez. You know what the Fez
What's the
is?
fez?
Those guys that stand. So the Fez is the hat that the Shriners wear. It's the red hat. It's so it's a fez that has a black, usually has a black tassel. It'll have the crescent moon a lot of times with the
Oh,
with the
yeah.
salat
I
the
know what you're
Islamic
talking about.
sword.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fez. Now there's a certain reason, and a lot of guys yet again do not know why the fez is red, but the fez is usually a crimson, or a crimson red, or a dark red. The reason for that, and the story behind that, is when Muhammad in the second or third century went across the Middle East and was overtaking the Middle East. in in Fez, Morocco, there was a group of Christians, and Muhammad slaughtered those Christians, and his men took their fezzes off and dipped it in the Christians' blood, and that's why they're blood red.
Well, that's weird.
So that has nothing to do with the Bible, has nothing to do with with Christianity whatsoever. It has everything to do with the death of Christians. And yet again, nobody does their research into why these things that they wear and have, representing the shrine and Masons, they don't do any research into this stuff. So they don't know the representation of what this stuff is. So they're oblivious. And if you were to talk to them about it and say, "Hey, do you understand what this is?" A lot of them would argue
Yeah.
with you. You know, oh, that's not what that means. Well, no. If you do your research, that's exactly what it means. It's the shrine is built on Islamic religion. And so it's just very weird and backwards. And yet again, when I went through the shrine ceremony, I didn't feel comfortable. But yet I'm sitting there thinking, now my father and grandfather and uncles, they weren't in the shrine. They chose not to be part of the shrine. But me, I thought, oh man, I wanted to go on in further deeper. So I went in to become a Shriner. But now I've backed away from all of that, and I don't have any more to do with it. Um, and like I say, I still have a lot of family and friends that are involved in it. And again, I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're Satanists. They just don't understand what they're involved in.
Right.
They
And
truly
so,
don't.
like,
And now, go ahead.
so as a Shriner, are you given, let's say, like, so what would be the benefit of being a Shriner? Are you exposed to certain teachings or knowledge or secrets that are only to Shriners that would make somebody want to become a Shriner, or just if you wanted to promote the lodge in more of like philanthropy, or what's the word? Um, philanthropy? Yeah.
Philanthropy.
Type of style is, if that's more what you're into, is that why? So, what would be the benefit of?
All of the above there. I think it's all of the above because you being part of the shrine, it's like the social club. So they have a lot of banquets. There's a lot of parties with alcohol, where in the Masonic order, that doesn't really take place. I mean, in the Masonic order, you may have a chili supper or a catfish supper or something, but there's no alcohol. Where the shrine, they can party, they can bring their wives, um, and they have, like I say, they have these big banquets and that type of thing. So it's more like of a social gathering, and you see a lot of guys with clout. There's a lot of country stars that are part of the shrine and that are Masons. In fact, there was a real, I won't say their name, but there was a real high um, country music star that was part of our Shrine Lodge, very well known country music star, and he was at some of the events and that type of thing. So it kind of gets you access into an upper echelon of people that you can rub shoulders and
So
elbows with.
it's like a form of
And
like
that
getting more clout and networking possibilities and stuff like that.
correct,
So
correct, correct, because the 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 Masonic order has a certain handshake, and I can, because I was in it, I can look at a gentleman, and by his posture, by the way he handles himself, and by certain other signals, I can tell whether that gentleman is in the Masonic order or not. I
hmm,
can't, because I was in it and I was part of it. Especially if I shake hands with him, I'll know instantly. I'll know instantly if he's part of the Masonic order.
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So So after Shriners, what do you what's the next level up?
Well, before we get into the next levels up, then you have the Eastern Star. And the Eastern Star is the women's side of Freemasonry. And I'll be honest with you, my grandmother, um, and these, when I talk about my grandfather and my grandmother, this would be on my father's side. My grandmother was, and my aunt were part of the Eastern Star. And I'll be honest with you, it's nothing but it's built off of a coven of witches. Now, that doesn't mean the ladies that are in it are witches, or that they're dealing with, um, Satan or anything like that. But what they don't understand is the basis of the Eastern Star. That's what it's built off of. It's built off of mysticism, dealing with the occult. That's what it's all about. The but it's the women's side of masonry, because women are not allowed into the Masonic lodges. So they usually hold Eastern Star in they may hold it in the lodge, but they can't hold it in the lodge room, because usually the lodges will have meeting rooms where they can have um, meals and stuff like that outside of the lodge room. So the women can go there and hold their ceremonies, but they cannot go into the actual lodge room, which no one but Masons can go into that room. Not even um, any, unless you're a Mason, you cannot go into the lodge room or the ceremonial room. Nobody except a Mason can go in there,
Okay,
into those rooms.
so that's interesting. So they do a lot of so the Eastern Star practices a lot of like mysticism, magic like that.
Correct. Correct. Now, they would tell you they don't, but they do. They don't realize it. And another thing about um, the Masonic Order, anytime there is a degree going on or official business going on, there is a guard that is outside the door. They're and they rotate that guard out, so it's not the same guard every time. So, but anytime there's any official Masonic business going on, there's a guard
Outside
outside
the
the
door of the
door.
lodge or the room.
It depends. Sometimes it's outside of the lodge. Sometimes it's outside of the meeting room. It could be either or.
Hmm.
And that guard will stop you. And if you do not have the right credentials, his task is to keep you from coming in.
That's pretty wild.
Mhm.
It's the secretism that I know is very interesting. Uh,
That's that's what really perked my interest of like, what have I really got myself
well,
into?
it's human nature to want to know. Oh, if you tell somebody, "Hey, you can't come in here because we're doing something secret," human nature is, "I want to know what they're doing in there." And when you ask,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and like you said, when you ask people who are Masons or who, um, you know, kind of they're just like, oh, it's kind of like a fraternity, like a guys group that gets together kind of thing. We don't do anything interesting and stuff like that. And if that was, and I believe them on a certain level, but then you also got to be like, if that's really true, then what's all the secrecy about?
Hmm.
And I think that's it. I think a lot of it has to do with people wanting to join because of the secrets. It's but so from what I've found out about the Masons is as far as their role in the grand scheme of things, as far as the whole hierarchy of the different secret societies. Because from what I've understand, is they're all separate. However, there is a hierarchy of it all, and you can be in multiple different societies. So, like the 33rd degree Masons can be in the Illuminati as well, and for, since the Masons have done a really good job at organizing their entire system. Um, a lot of secret societies will infiltrate a Mason lodge to promote kind of a different agenda and use the power behind the Freemason um, stigma to bring people into their lodge and promote it, a kind of an adjacent but different agenda to what the Masons' agenda is.
Well, you have to look at the whole picture when you do the research of what the Masonic order is. You'll run into the name of a guy by the name of Albert Pike, and he's considered the father of modern day Masonry. He was a Confederate general. He was born December the 29th, 1809, and he died April the 2nd, 1891. He um, he was a lawyer, and he had a passion for the Native Americans because he was into occultism, and he had a fascination with the Native American
Mm-hmm.
religion. So he was very empathetic to the Native Americans. In fact, he fought a lot of cases in court on behalf of Native Americans. But saying that, he wrote a book called Morals and Dogma,
Yep, I've
and
heard of
I'll
it.
read just a little bit of some of the book. And it says, and this is a quote from Albert Pike: "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign, grand inspectors and generals, we say this, that you may repeat to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, 30th degrees, the Masonic religion should be." Now remember, he's saying the Masonic religion. So he's signifying that it is a
Mm-hmm.
religion, should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Now this is his quotes. This is coming out of his book. For again, maintain in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Anoni, talking about Jesus, uh, culminate or spread false and harmful statements about him? So he's saying, if Lucifer was not God, why would Jesus spread bad things about him? Yes, Lucifer is God. And that's coming straight from Albert Pike in his book, Morals and
Yeah,
Dogma. So, I mean, he's admitting that the Masonic order is an order of Luciferianism, of occultism and Luciferianism. And in several of these guys that are good guys in the lodge don't understand that and have no recognition because they don't do the research into who these people are. And I mean, this Albert Pike was not a good dude. He was not a good dude at all. Because when you get into Albert Pike, you also get into Madame Blavatsky, who was she was an occultist who just could not stand Christians. And she was big in the Eastern Star. And so now you have all these webs starting to intertangle with one another. And
so the Eastern
go ahead.
Star, I, the more I hear it or hear you talk about it, the more I think of the Illuminati's branch called the Mothers of Darkness.
I would absolutely agree that there's intertangled webs within that. Yes, 100%.
That's really it's really well. It makes more sense because like with the Illuminati, and so with the Illuminati, I'll kind of go into that just a little bit, and we'll bring it back, kind of how they all tie in. So the Illuminati was
Yeah.
started uh, by Adam Weishaupt. He was a German professor in canon law and practical philosophy uh, back in 17, or he founded the Order of the Illuminati uh, in 1776, May 1st, 1776. So he went. He was a professor in the college in Germany, uh, and he had very anti-religious beliefs. Um, that were very unpopular at the time because you had the Catholic Church and you had basically the norm was the exact opposite today. The norm is religion is not real, and these very um, what's it called? Not very just kind of what modern day scientists say now, and modern day kind of education is very just black and white. Like if you can see it, it's real. If you can't, it's not real. Um, but it was very unpopular at the time. He was very ridiculed for it. However, he his plan was to use the Freemason uh, organization because they had a lot of power, a lot of influence in that society back then to kind of push um, this anti-religion kind of facts-based narrative using the Freemason Lodge, and he actually got
Mhm.
to be um, a lodge leader. He created his own lodge under the Freemasons.
Mhm.
Um, he also, and with the help of, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but his name's Adolf Nig. Is that what? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that for obvious reasons. But
Mhm.
so he was good friends with this guy. This guy was a general in the in the German army in the late 1700s. He he had high social status. His idea was, hey, if we want to push this agenda, we need to get some more people with some clout and some status and some money to be a part of this. So they recruited people
Mhm.
like uh, princes, noblemen, people with higher status in that sort of way. Um, Fast forward, so that builds in the European nations. They end up being in control of over 46 different lodges, all flying under the Freemason banner. But inside the
Mhm.
lodges, they were the Order of the Illuminati. Um,
Mhm.
so fast forward from this kind of, and they all believe the same thing. This was before the Illuminati kind of got into the occult heavy, and the Illuminati was in the early 1900s was hijacked again by Aleister Crowley, along with Jack Parsons, along with who's the Scientology guy?
Oh,
Yeah,
Elon
Elon
Hubbard.
Hubbard. Um, So, and the crazy thing is, you had Jack Parsons, the father of rockets. You had Aleister Crowley. He was basically part of um, British intelligence at that time. And then you had Elon Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology. Uh,
Now, what do all three of those men have in
well,
common?
they're all heavy in the occult. Heavy.
They're all master
Yes,
masons.
exactly. Then this is where you get this crossover.
They're all
You
master
get this
masons.
crossover of these societies and these people that kind of push this satanic occult ritual level to where these guys did not. I mean, uh, Aleister Crowley was an evil dude. I mean, in his early 20s,
Yeah.
he said he was able to channel a what was it? So he was a self-identified prophet, ceremonial magician, occultist, and was claimed at 22. He claimed that he was able to channel the spirit called itself um, AWAS.
AWAS.
Yes. Now that
He
name.
was also a raging pedophile.
Oh yeah, I'm a raging pedophile. He and I haven't been able to find any documentation of this. However, uh, Jack Parsons, Elon Hubbard, um, and Aleister Crowley, along with all three of their wives, was able. They claimed that they were able to open a portal using satanic ritualistic sex magic.
Yes.
Uh,
They performed the ceremony of the whore of Babylon.
exactly. That's what I was. The Whore of Babylon. Now, AWAS is you hear that name pop back up with people who do uh, what they call spiritual. They take that ayahuasca mushroom and they go on
Hmm.
these spirit quests, and they claim that they are guided by a spirit that calls itself AWAS, same spirit. And you hear this
Yeah.
all
Now,
over.
have you seen the drawings of that supposed
Yeah, it looks like
spirit?
a small gray
Looks
alien.
it looks a gray
Yeah,
alien. Yeah, it looks like a gray alien.
and so you have this major shift in the Illuminati to from secular. That's what the word I was thinking of earlier. You have a secular type dogma. Now you have, and it's a gradual pattern. So to get away from um, Christianity, religion is you go secular, then you go occult,
Mhm.
and you see that now in our society as far as how things have moved from. You have the early 90s being very secular, very um, or not even early 90s, farther back then when you had the industrial revolution, you had things turn very secular, very non-religious based type society. And now you see in today's 50 years later, in the early 2000s, things got um, very occultist. You had the new age, they call it the new age, which is basically witchcraft, where you have astrology being really pushed in. Astrology, however, is also one of the seven original scientists or sciences uh, that was taught to the sons and daughters of Cain by the fallen angels. That's how far back this stuff goes, and so now you bring the Illuminati back to modern day where it has gotten very into entertainment, um, and from what their job is in the whole scheme of the hierarchy of secret societies. You have the Freemasons at the very bottom, um, and the majority of Freemasons at the very bottom. At the very top of the Freemasons, their responsibility is to infiltrate government and education to push this. The ultimate agenda of all the secret societies is to have a one world government, the New World Order.
Yes.
Um, the Illuminati. is in charge of basically pushing and promoting this culture of anti God, anti Jesus, anti Christianity. Um, he actually, Aleister Crowley actually wrote a book called uh,
Do as
Do
thou
as Thou
wilt.
Wilt, meaning you are your own God, basically. And we have the same narrative pushed today that this whole you you are your own, you're the only person you should answer to type of narcissistic narrative that we have being pushed now, and that's not by coincidence at all. Uh, so their responsibility is to kind of steer culture and entertainment um, aspect of society to basically debauchery and Christianity's lame, sex, drugs, rock and roll's cool, and they just kind of push that narrative more and more and more through generation, through generation, through generation, and uh, yeah, and they're they do hold a lot. They hold a lot of power in um, celebrities. You have, I mean, it's Hollywood's just crawling with this stuff. You've got it now to
Yeah.
where
Oh, 100%.
you can't even like people that are trying to make it as actors, comedians, musicians, artists, anything.
Yeah. Look at P
Yeah, I
Diddy.
mean, look at
I mean,
Epstein, look at P Diddy, look at all this stuff. It's all satanic. I mean, even listen to Cat Williams. Cat Williams,
hmm
that was the most watched podcast when he went on Shannon
Shannon
Sharp
Sharp.
and Joe Rogan. He was talking about stuff that I
Yeah.
didn't even think that was even knowledge, like the
Yeah.
homunculus and all that stuff. But it's 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 all by design. These societies, think of it like an army. At the very top,
hmm
you have the nation, you have the generals and stuff like that. Then it's very structured like a government. At the very bottoms, you have foot soldiers like the Freemasons. Then you have the colonels, the mid level. Um, these are people that organize and execute certain areas of society to conquer. Um,
hmm And listen, these low level people, a lot of them don't even
and that,
realize
yeah, that
what they're doing. They
absolutely.
have no
Because if
knowledge
you
of
went
it.
out there and was like, "Hey
And
guys,
then
who wants to become an evil Satanist?" You're not going to get very many signatures.
yeah, yeah, and it's not till you get up into the upper echelon that they know exactly what they're doing. And these people are dealing with very high level occultists dealing with satanic sex magic, and they are the ones that are dealing in adrenochrome. You know, these are the people that are sacrificing children, that are exploiting children, that are trafficking children, that are murdering children. It gets very grotesque very quickly because they believe that they gain power
Hmm.
that way, and they think that if they've been seduced by Satan to believe that I'm going to give you power as long as you do what I tell you to do, and that's what they crave. They crave the power, the notoriety, the pleasure, all of these things that have been promised to them. That's a facade. That's not really real,
Oh yeah,
and they don't
and
understand that.
at the from I mean, this is just theory, but I do believe that Moloch, um, the demonic deity Moloch, is in. He's the general. When you get up to the basically generals of the satanic army in the supernatural realm. You have Moloch. I think he's in charge of the Illuminati because you have, I mean, from the very start, they're symbol was the Minerva owl, which the owl is the uh,
Symbol
symbol of
of
knowledge
knowledge,
and also the occult
occult.
and the symbol of Moloch. So you have the Bohemian Grove out there in Northern California where they go do a bunch of crap out in the woods in second week of July and sacrifice what they claim is an effigy of a child in front of this 40-foot owl out in the woods. And it's just wild. It's wild, wild, wild.
Well, Brandon, it gets even deeper because you have Margaret Sanger, who has ties to Madame Blavatsky, who was an occultist, who is, perpetuating abortion with Planned Parenthood. People don't understand. Abortion is a ritual of Satan that gives power to the occult demons. I mean, this is what the in Bible days when you talk about Moloch and Baal, this is what the pagans were doing. They were sacrificing their children to Moloch and Baal to gain power, to 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 gain power in some occultic way, and it's sick and grotesque. And yet here we are. This is People don't understand. This is what abortion is. No, it's my right. I can't afford to have a child. It doesn't matter when you give your child over to be sacrificed, whether it be abortion or in biblical days to sacrifice your child to Moloch. It is a pagan satanic ritual of death that gives
Death of
power
it's
to the
important.
occult.
It's death of innocence. That's what gives it
Exactly,
power. It's
exactly.
it's a it's a innocent life that holds that power. There's no power in the death of a corrupt type of soul or spirit. Um, there's no power in that. It's the power of, and that's. I mean, look at the trafficking stuff. It's all corruption of innocence is where they gain their power from.
Yeah, and here again, I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit, and people don't know this, but guess what happens on January 6th? January 6th, who's ever voted into office, they will have an inauguration,
Mm-hmm.
correct? People don't know that a few blocks down the road at a Masonic lodge, at the very same time that they're having the inauguration, they are doing a mock ceremony. The Masonic order is doing a mock ceremony of raising Apollyon. So they're inaugurating the spirit of Apollyon to go into the person that is to be president of the United
What? I've
States.
never heard about this.
Look it up.
What is
That's
Apollyon?
Apollyon is Zeus. It's the spirit of Satan. So when you go into the rotunda
Yeah.
at the Capitol, you see the the effigy. When you look in that rotunda, up when you look above your head, you look in rotunda. It is basically it's telling the story of George Washington becoming a deity, becoming a god. That's what that is above your head. That's George Washington becoming a god, becoming godlike. And what they're doing when they perform this Masonic, and George Washington was a Mason, a master Mason. They perform this ceremony of rising of Apollyon, and the spirit of Satan is to go into the president.
That's crazy. And and for
And they They've
And
admitted
for
it.
people,
They've admitted
well,
it.
here's the thing: for the people out there still like, that's pretty wild. These people must be stupid, kind of thing. And and people, this is what I want everybody to understand. Whether you believe it's true or you don't believe it's true is almost irrelevant at this point, because the people who have a supreme influence and power over all of us, our government, to our celebrities, to the people who influence our everyday lives and our children's lives, they believe it to be true, and they act as if it is true. And these are not dumb people. So if these
Hmm.
people have to have some type of intelligence to get the success that they have all they can't exist at the same time. You know what I'm saying? You can't
Hmm.
be a super intelligent person that's gained all types of wealth and success, but be dumb enough to fall into these beliefs and rituals and stuff if there wasn't something to it that is real. And even if you refuse to believe that it's
That's
real,
right.
and you refuse to believe that these people are that these deities and stuff that are real, you have to also then say, if they're not, these people believe they're real, and they're acting as though if they're real. So these people don't. If that's true, they don't need to have the type of influence and power that they have.
Correct. Correct. And let me ask you a question. What is the Statue of Liberty to you?
Well, this is something I have dived in. I did it. I looked into it after the Olympics whole thing. The so it's Lady Liberty is what we're told it is.
Hmm.
However, that's not true. Also,
Do
this is
you do
what
you
sparked this, and I'll back up until so the French is who gave us the Statue of Liberty, which I never really understood that. Um,
hmm
who comes and fights a war on somebody else's land, and then after they win, the people who came to help give them this big giant trophy? Because look,
hmm
I mean, basically that's what it
exactly.
is.
And
The big giant trophy says you won, but if they're the ones who came in and really like turn the tide, the French did.
well, do you know who
It's
the
Lucifer is
the
who
cor-
the Statue of
well,
Liberty is modeled after. You have
correct. But do you know who the sculptor is of the Statue of
I
Liberty?
can't remember his name.
His name his name is Frederick Auguste Bartholomew. Bartholdi. Bartholdi. He was a master mason.
Yeah, and the 7 points of the crown is seven deadly
The
sins. You
the
even have a chain. There's a chain on the
a
a ball
ball
and
and
chain on the
chain.
ankle of the
Mhm.
statue.
And it doesn't look like a lady to me. It looks like a man. It does not look like a
Right.
lady. And what is the statue holding?
A light.
Light, the bearer
And I
of
think I
light,
said this in
of
another
knowledge.
podcast. Maybe it was on uh, the one about the Olympics and stuff. There was a painter that called it's I want to say the painting's called something Legion. We are Legion or something like that.
Let's go. Well, there's one painting that's called the
Yeah,
Rise
the
of
Rise of
Lucifer,
Lucifer
and
or the
and
Legion of Lucifer. Um, the, it
and
looks
it looks exactly
identical
like the Statue of
to the
Liberty.
Statue of Liberty.
It's
Identical, facing everything.
yeah,
And that's just that's how they hide this stuff in plain sight.
in plain sight. It's not what we think
Now,
it is.
lately, I mean,
It's
people noticed it at the Olympics. It's gotten really bad. It's gotten to the point where it's like
Yeah.
they're not even trying to hide it.
They're putting it
They're
in your
putting it in your
face.
face and
Yeah, they're
saying
not
basically
hiding it
do
anymore.
something about it. And
But we have a statue sitting in our harbor, in New York Harbor, that is a representation of Satan. It's not Lady Liberty. It's not, some, lady that's, bring all your weary and tired, all that kind of jazz. It's a representation of occultic
mhm.
evil. Period.
And we've only scratched the surface of these secret societies, and there's so much. They're very similar in how they operate and everything, and that's by design. From one thing I want to touch on as far as the upper levels of the Illuminati, the upper levels of the Masonry,
Mhm.
the only way you can get to those levels, from what I understand, it's definitely in the Illuminati. I don't know about Masonry. Is you have to be there's a difference between a 33rd degree Mason and a 33rd degree adept Mason. Adept means that you are a descendant of the royal bloodlines. Uh, and as a and I don't know if people have heard of the Society Skull and Bones at Yale. There's a Yale or Harvard. I think it's Yale.
I think it's all the Ivy
Okay.
League schools,
Well,
basically.
these
All the Ivy League
these the
schools.
Skull and Bones.
It started at
Yeah.
Yale or Harvard. Either one of those started, but I think it's throughout all the Ivy League schools.
Oh, sorry, it's getting late. Ugh. I'll cut that out. So these the Skull and Bones Society is basically like a recruitment of the royal next generation bloodlines. Um,
Mhm.
they're not full from the royal bloodline. They are basically distant cousins. But that being said, it still puts them above. And when I say royal bloodlines, I'm talking about bloodlines that descended from the Nephilim, that ultimately
Yes.
descended from the fallen angels. That's why they have this God complex, because they truly believe that they are not fully that they are part angel, and
Divine.
they are above what a normal person is. Uh,
Mhm.
but these are basically recruiting, getting them ready to take their place in um, the roles in their societies that they're given to. Um, and I think
Yeah.
what they do at the Skull and Bones Societies, first they're taught about the bloodlines, they're taught about where they come from, they're taught about them, what the overall goal is as far as the New World Order, and then from there they basically are ushered into two different categories. You're ushered into the categories of military and politics and education, or you're ushered into the cultural area with the Illuminati, whether it's entertainment, celebrity status, and whatever. Uh,
It's being a CEO of a Fortune 500
right,
company, that kind of
exactly.
thing.
Sorry, I apologize about that. I'm getting tired. This stuff,
Mhm.
and we're gonna go over some more. And this is just the intro to the entire um, series we're gonna go down. Um, we wanted to go over the bottom to the top because most people have heard of Illuminati's. Most people have heard of Masonry and stuff like that at some point. But next, we're going to go into the Rosicrucians and the Jesuits.
The Frill Society, which that's what Nazi Germany. That's where Hitler came into the occult, was through the Frill Society, which Madame Blavatsky was all over that. She had ties to that as well, the Frill Society. Um, so a lot of people, anytime you ever see a gentleman wearing a ring, that has the square and compass and a skull in the center of it instead of the G. Because most of the time it's the square and compass and the G, which is the Masonic order. That means that that gentleman was part of the Skull and Bones, and he's also a
Right.
Mason. That's what that
And a
means.
lot of, and I want
Um,
to, so keep this in mind, y'all. So when these society, obviously Illuminati and Freemasonry, these things get rebranded throughout time into something
yes.
else. So, like you had the Knights Templar, um, that got rebranded into the Rosicrucians, and then broken up into the Illuminati. The still you have Rosicrucians, but these things intertwined so much so, and that's how you keep everybody on the same mission on board. And there's checks and balances on things, and because you don't want what they don't want is a society to gain more power or more. They want to have everybody under their thumb. Everybody's in check.
And listen,
Everybody knows their marching orders.
yeah, and I used to think that the Knights Templar was, basically an order of priests who took an oath to protect the church, the Catholic Church, and protect the, the pilgrims that were going in and out of the
Mhm.
Holy Land. But when you really do a deep dive on the Knights Templar, that they were the first bankers. They came up with today's banking system. They were the first, um, basically, our reservist
That's where our
banks.
Federal Reserve comes
They were
from,
the
is the Knights Templar,
That's that banking
because they
system.
didn't want to
The Knights
get.
Templar, that they're
Basically, what
banking.
they did was so they were able to travel without their wealth on them because that they didn't want to get it stolen from them. What they would do is they would cash it into a lodge, their wealth. They would get a certificate back, and then they could basically claim when they get to their next lodge, they could claim back their money with that certificate.
Yeah.
And
Well, and when we say lodge, it would be a monastery because it was the
right,
Knights
right, right.
Templar, and they were warrior priests. And they amassed a gigantic amount of wealth. And that's why now a lot of people say, well, the Knights Templar got a raw deal because the King of France was doing, was warring and was running out of money. So they devised a plan with the Pope to say that the Knights Templar were devil worshippers and they took their wealth. That may not be true. What may be true, or I should say, it might be true that because now research has come out that the Knights Templar might have been a breakaway sect of Catholicism that started to worship Baphomet, which is the goat, half woman, half male goat, which is a symbol of
It's
Satanism.
also
It
the uh, the deity of transhumanism and transgenderism.
Yes. So now I don't want to believe that that was the case, but it's starting to look like that the accusations of Satanism possibly were true
Well, no, I think that
about
I
the Knights
think
Templar.
I'm working on I'm working to file out the kind of details on. I think what happened is so these 13 families, each family comes from a different royal bloodline of a different type of Nephilim or fallen angel.
Hmm.
And what happens is you get one set that because it said in the Bible these Nephilim warred against each other all the time. These societies and stuff they work together because they ultimately want the same thing. However, they all want the power. They all want to be.
Yeah.
They all want their bloodline to ultimately be in charge and take the next reigns.
Hmm.
Now, in order to they know that they can't do that by themselves. That's why they need the other royal type of families all in lockstep right now. However, you you will occasionally get some of these societies that stem from different bloodlines and stuff too that get a little big for the britches and want to war against somebody else to kind of take control of a certain area. And I think that's what happened in World War I, and I also think that happened with the Knights Templar.
Hmm.
Also, when we talk about it, I think that's happened to the Jesuits. I think the
Yeah.
Jesuits were actually outcasted from the secret society hierarchy and just recently put back in, basically on like a probational hearing type of term. That's because we'll get into all of it, but it's very interesting and it makes a lot of sense once you put it in perspective on where these secret societies come from. and and you see the agendas being pushed today. You see the like COVID. You see the Illuminati rebranded into the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab, and who's
Hmm.
also a Mason, and also comes from the heartland of Germany, where the Illuminati comes from. You see,
He, his father was a, which would be now considered a billionaire, but back in World War II was a multimillionaire because his father had a manufacturing plant that worked for the
yeah, and
Nazis.
these people, and you go through all
That's
these
why.
different crazy people. None of them came from like none of them are self-made. None of them are come from anything as far as like a low class. They're all come from wealth, and they'll all come from other powerful families. And
Yeah.
I do specifically want to get into the St. Clair family when we get there.
Yes.
This is just me thinking out loud because the St. Clair family comes from the um, what's the Viking's name? It was
Well,
Ragnar
you've got
Lothbrok's brother. Crap, I forgot his name. Anyway, so the
um,
so the famous Viking Ragnar Lothbrok, he had a brother that eventually became the king of France and married into the St. Clair family. Now, at the time, the St. Clair family, that so since their descendants come from that family, the Viking family, Ragnar Lothbrok and his brother in Viking lore were said to be direct descendants from Odin, which I find really
mhm.
interesting because that's a family that you can literally follow all the way back up to an actual deity or lowercase g god. What was his name? Hold on, I've got to look this up real quick because it's going to bother me. And
I
give
got
me,
you. No, you're good. It's all culminates together. It's all a satanic soup of these different secret societies.
Rollo. So Rollo, descendant of Odin, married into the St. Clair family. And when we get there, I'll go back because the St. Clair family, I want to, it's not the king, but I want to say the St. Clair families, you can come all the way down to the Rockefellers family. But when you follow these bloodlines back, they all follow. They all claim to come go back to some type of god or deity or whatever, and that's the whole point of all these societies.
Yeah, and listen, I was part of the Masons and the Shriners, and I listened to a podcast one time where Mr. Bill Schnoblin was on there, and Bill Schnoblin is now he's an ex-Satanist who now gave his life over to Christ and became a, a very a preacher, and basically a counselor to help people get out of Satanism and these secret societies. And he was a master Mason. He was also a satanic priest, and listening to him, he said, once he um, became a Christian, he denounced the Masonic order and just did away with all of that. Wrote a letter to the lodge and telling him to take him off the rolls and that kind of type of thing. And what I did is, when you're in the Masonic lodge, you get an apron, and you use this apron in certain ceremonies that you do. So I had an apron. I had several other things dealing with the Masonic lodge, and also my fez. And I'll be honest with you, I burnt all of it, and I burned it all and prayed over it to say, God, sever the ties, the maybe demonic bonds that are out there. And when I say, I wasn't demonic, but I'm saying that the spiritual realm that might be out there that would allow the demonic forces in, because I've had this attached to me. I built a fire and burnt every bit of it and prayed over it and said, God, sever those ties, because I don't want any bad juju on me. I don't want to, I denounce everything to do with the Masonic order and the shrine, because I understand what it is. I understand that it is a satanic pagan religion. Now, again, I want to reiterate, because I have some very dear family and friends that are in the Masonic order and are in the shrine. That doesn't mean that they're Satanists. It just means that they've been fooled. They don't understand the true meaning of what they're doing. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them that they worship Satan. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means they truly don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's all by design, because
And
if you can get people to participate in
yeah,
something, and because that power, because that gives the ritual,
correct.
and that's why they dress up in these robes and do all these crazy type things during the rituals, and because it gives the ritual more power and more authority.
Authority.
Yes.
Correct. And I didn't want anything to do with that anymore, because if you allow a little bit in, it can creep in and cause bigger issues. So that's why I burnt everything. I mean, everything that dealt with the Masonic order or the shrine, I took all of it and burned it, because because they give you a little handbook. It's a little bitty handbook, and it's coded. It's basically a code, because yet again, you're not supposed to let these secrets out. So if anybody saw this book and tried to read it, they wouldn't
Mhm.
understand it. I took that book, I burned all of it. I didn't want any more to do with it, because I didn't want this in my life, because I want to worship and proclaim Jesus Christ and not this pagan satanic religion.
Right, and it's, I don't know. I don't think it really sounds like we're being too preachy or anything. We're basically, the whole purpose of going over these societies is, yes, it's interesting of how all this stuff works, but if you really apply it, you can see it in everyday life, especially nowadays where it's getting so
Correct.
blatant, and
Mhm.
it's so evil. Like, you people always wonder, like, where does the evil come from? Where does was it what happens to somebody that causes them to do these evil things? And it obviously doesn't come from any like normal state. Like it has to come. It's not. I
Yeah.
would say it's not natural. You know what I mean? It's not
Yes.
unnatural. So Tucker
Yeah.
Carlson said this. He said it's not natural, so therefore it has to be supernatural.
100%. And people are dabbling in things that they truly don't understand, that there is a supernatural world and forces that are out there that they cannot see that are working against them instead of
Oh
for
yeah,
them.
and it's like people that think that there's good ghosts. There's not good
Yeah.
ghosts. There's
No, I'm
not.
sorry, there's not.
It's not like
And the Bible tells us this. The Bible tells us not to dabble and talk to spirits or to dabble in pharmakia, which pharmakia is, necromancy, talking to the dead, and or playing with a Ouija board. That's all. That's no no. God forbids
oh,
it
I've done
for
some
us to
research on
do.
the Ouija board. Remind me next one to
Oh
go
my
over
gosh.
that
Yeah.
because that's not just the creation of the Ouija board is the most wild story that you would be like, what in the hell
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
people thinking?
Yeah.
And like the
Yeah.
Ouija board, the original ones were, I mean, it's just wild. And these things are the
Yeah.
Ouija
And
board rights were bought by a toy company.
I
And
know, right? Yeah, it's
it was
freaky.
completely
And
designed to bring to open doorways for spirits. And if you disagree with
well,
me, there's no such thing as good ghosts. Then why is it that every ghost movie is scary? Other than Casper,
exactly.
what ghosts are innate
Yeah.
scary. We are down to our core level. We're afraid of them, and that's for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, Brandon, on Amazon, they're selling the heavenly Ouija board,
I told you,
and
rebranding,
it's based off.
rebranding.
Yeah, they're rebranding it and talk to angels now. Let's talk to angels instead of the bad things. We're going to talk to angels, and I do that in
Yeah,
quotes.
because like you have so much
It's like,
control
are
into
you
what you're talking to.
exactly? It's again, you hit the nail on the head. It's a rebranding of a
Once something
ancient,
stops selling because
you know.
the kind of truth has come out of it so much, like everybody knows that Ouija boards are
Hmm.
bad. When they first come out with, they didn't know what was going on. So what they do, they rebrand it, and now you have these spirit
Yes.
boxes that people like to take when they're ghost hunting
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's basically a modern day digital Ouija board.
Yeah. Now, and I'll be honest with you, Brandon. I'll go with you to hunt for Bigfoot. I'll go with you to hunt for Dogman, the Rake, whatever. But you want me to go to a haunted house? That's where I
No,
draw the line, dude. Because I don't want nothing to follow me
no,
home.
we're not
I
gonna
ain't
be
doing it.
hunting any spirits. That's for sure. Heck
No.
no.
No, no, no. No. I want to hunt the somewhat physical.
Yeah, if yes, the somewhat physical we can hunt. And
Yeah.
again, this is what this
Uh,
podcast is about. It's a number one, get you a little more curious than the average person to ask more questions. And we want to
yes.
be awake, not woke.
Yeah.
We want to know
Yeah.
what's going on,
Yeah.
why it's going on, because stuff is
And there's a reason why, Brandon, and we might have talked about this before. I think we have, is how it's like time is speeding up, and I feel it, and I've talked to other people. There's an anxiousness that's going on right now. We're like right now we're anxious because of November 5th. What's going to
yeah,
happen November 5th? Because either way, Brandon, all hell's going to break
yeah.
loose.
I mean, we've talked to this long before we even. I mean, this was one of the reasons we started the podcast. Is you wake up and
Yeah.
it you can just feel this heaviness in the air. You just feel
Yeah.
like things are not right. I've never felt like that
Yeah.
before. Like you never I've never
Yeah.
felt like I remember back when I was like a kid or even like in teenage years or even like early college and stuff. Nobody gave a crap who you voted for. Politics were
Yeah.
Nobody thought about politics in any type of like they do today.
You could sit across the table from somebody and disagree on topics, on ways of handling certain affairs within our government, and walk away and be perfectly good
Well, that's the
friends.
thing because
No big
back
deal.
it's like you could say you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever, which I don't think that there when you get up there's just a uniparty up there. I don't really think that there I mean we divide ourselves into Democrat and Republican.
Yeah.
Uh but when people I mean they're all friends up there. Then what they do is they
Oh
use
yeah.
their theater degree and go out on a congressional floor with a bunch of cameras and play argument, um,
Yeah.
just to kind of give us what we want to see. But nobody
And
cared. When
and
did
my
politics and stuff start becoming something that people really like attach their identity to?
dude, people have divorced over the politics situation, dude.
And it's not even they're
Are you
attaching
kidding me?
themselves to their own party. They're attaching themselves to people.
Yeah. Because in the scheme of things, Brandon, one political candidate, one political leader over another, they can't save
No,
us.
they're
Only
just
Jesus
people.
Christ can save us.
They're
They're
that's the
just
thing.
people.
These people are no more like yes, their job and their social position has influence, but they're just people.
They're just people. And don't get me wrong, God can use people. God can use a politician, good or bad. Good or bad, because we see that in the Bible. We see that there were some bad leaders over Israel. God still used them for his glory. It didn't mean that it was always best for the people, because a lot of times it was because of judgment. But either way, God, it doesn't matter because God's in control. So God's going to use whoever is chosen for his glory, whether that's judgment or whether that is a vessel to be used to glorify him in a way of helping a political, what's going on in this country. you know I would debate whether our country is too far gone or not. Some people say, oh no, there's still hope, and then I don't know, Brandon.
But
It's
what
We've
cracks
gone
me
down
up
the
is these people aren't even like impressive. You know what I mean?
no, no, they're
They're
not
clearly
impressive on
not
me.
even like intelligent people that you would be like, you know what? Yeah, they're actually pretty smart. No, they're dumb people. They're the dumbest of us. Like back in the day,
It's
we elected people. We elected like the best and the brightest of us as a collective to make the important
hmm
decisions. That's how
no,
everything
I
else in
agree.
the whole world is ran. The best, the brightest, the most
hmm
competent people are the ones who make the big decisions. Obviously,
yeah,
these people are not the best, they're not the brightest, and not even by a long shot.
yeah,
And
It- it's crazy,
it's just
man.
like I'm just looking at everybody. I'm like, this is not right. Like, you can't tell me
This is the best we got.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump. He's still like, yes, he is probably the best person for the job right now. However, he's not the like. I want to get back to where we're in. we're electing like the best and brightest of everybody. And he's a great business
Yeah.
guy, but he's not the best and brightest of us all. Like, I guess I'm setting my bar a little too high, but but like we should we should set the bar really high because it's a really important
Yeah.
job, and we shouldn't just let somebody
Yeah.
that's burdened for what has not been unburdened up there
Mhm.
in the Oval Office. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
It's
taking crazy
it's getting
pills.
darn ridiculous. Oh, no, no. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, really, really, this is what we're doing now. This is really what's going on.
It's so funny.
Okay.
It's so funny.
I'm just like, wow,
I mean,
because I'm
this is
telling you,
what we're
dude,
doing now.
come November 5th, come November 5th, no matter either way it goes, it's going to be a crap show. It's going to be a crap
Yeah.
show. It's just um uh you know,
Really, guys? This is what
maybe
we're
after
doing
four,
now?
yeah. I'm telling you, man, it's you know, and I know we don't mean to get political, and we're not telling our really, our political issues here are, but there's extremists on both sides. You've got extreme left and extreme right. And when you go to the extreme on either side, neither one of those are good.
No.
Neither one of those are good. You know, let's draw it back in closer to the mid range, and it's just I don't know, man. It's
Was my
but
my
yet
my
again,
my
it
point
comes.
was our bar is set now to the person most qualified only just has common sense. It's like
Mhm,
who makes more sense? Well,
mhm.
I say no, you should have a little bit more than just common sense. Like
Yeah.
Andrew Jackson, all the founding fathers, these people were super smart. I mean, look at our
Mhm.
constitution. Think of how
To come up with the
forward thinking
Constitution that we have.
that these people had to have been to
Hmm.
have a document that is so just like ironclad throughout all has
Yeah.
changed over time since then. It still like checks every box. These people were not just common sense people. They had common sense, but they also had like an X factor above that. That that's the caliber that we need to be firing out as far as people in
Hmm.
charge. Is that's a problem. We
Yeah.
let people in charge of things that I think one qualification you should have if you're going to have any uh, job of any major authority is you shouldn't want the job in the first place. That should be the first qualification of
Yeah.
anybody in charge is how bad do you want the job? I really don't want that job. Okay, well then you're going to I mean people that currency is power do not belong anywhere near power.
Well, and yet again, we have a ginormous club, or let's call it a fraternity, with our Congress and Senate. They go in, you know, with humble means, but they come out million and billionaires.
That's because
Something's wrong with
they're
that.
not intelligent to do anything else. If they were, they wouldn't be up there.
Well, but they've made laws to benefit them and not benefit us as the
Right.
people.
But
Once you become a Congress and senator, you get free health care, and your family gets free health care for life. For
mhm.
life. And then you do insider trading. If you and I do insider trading, Brandon, we go to jail.
Oh yeah.
But it's okay for Congress and
Yeah.
senators to do it.
Uh,
You know. It's just plumb ridiculous.
Well, sorry guys, we didn't mean to
But
go
yet
off
again,
on like
that's part.
a political
Yeah,
tangent there, but as it's rolling up closer to election day and stuff, it's just it blows my mind what's going on.
me and you both. It blows my mind as well because I guess I'm just going to get the popcorn and watch the crap show because I've already voted, so I don't want to be anywhere near the polls on November 5th. So I'll just pop some
What was
popcorn
it? Joe Rogan was
and
like,
watch.
it's almost like the last few years, if you could wrap up the nation into seasons like a TV show, it's like this season of the United States of America is going to be wild. Because
Yeah,
what have we had this year? Or last year we had COVID. That was basically the season finale of it, of COVID. Or like,
yeah. The
and then
last.
we have these just crazy things that are happening. People are trying to assassinate Trump. People are just losing their minds left and right. It's like, what's going to happen next season? It's like the final. You know what I mean? It's that's how.
How are we going to top this next
Yeah.
season?
What season finale? And I don't even want to know what the season finale is.
I was going to say something. I don't want to say it because I don't want to speak it into
Yeah,
existence.
but well, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this first section. Next one, we're just going to keep on rolling with these societies, and how crazy and uh, how real they are. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right, my
See
friends.
you later, guys.